Hello everybody, welcome to Oscar Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and drop a like on this video. I'm trying to hit 100k subscribers, so your subscription would be much appreciated. Also drop a like, it only takes 1 second, makes a massive difference in how the video performs in the YouTube algorithm. So, play-in tournament day 2 is here, and I gotta say right out of the top, probably what I'm gonna title this video will be something along the lines of, I'll say it, the play-in tournament is awesome. The play-in tournament has been a contentious thing among NBA fans, and over the past few years, it's been something people debated whether or not it's a good or bad thing. I've been in pretty strong defense of it, but also been apprehensive. But at this point, it's kind of hard to deny that this is exciting and interesting basketball happening that otherwise wouldn't be, and it's ultimately not that consequential because it is resulting in getting your ass kicked by the Celtics and the Miami Heat or the Nuggets and, well, not the case of the Grizzlies with the Lakers, but you get what I mean. It's not consequential enough that if something dumb happens, it doesn't really matter that much, but it's also still interesting and fun to watch, and today's games were really good. Yesterday, one of the 2 games was good, so we're 3 for 4. Also, speaking of 3 for 4, I am 3 for 4 on series predictions thus far. I did not get Hawks, Heat. Hawks Heat. I did not get that correct, but every other one has been correct so far. But let's take a look at these games. First, we're going to talk about Toronto versus Chicago. As a Bulls fan, obviously, I had some investment in this, or at least in theory, because really, I'm not that particularly excited about the prospect of getting destroyed by the Bucks, as I previously mentioned. But, you know, you root for your team to do good, and they definitely had a performance tonight that was very worthy of having some pride in it. They went down by 19 points at one point, but managed to come back off of the back of a carry job from Zach Lavine. The Bulls offense has always been bad, and it kind of always relies on these big outbursts to happen if anything is going to happen, and luckily it did. Says a lot about how poorly constructed this offense really is and how poor the fit is, that it requires something like Zach scoring 30 points in the second half. But hey, it did happen, so the Bulls are going on to the second round of the play-in tournament, and they got to be the first 10 seed to ever win a play-in game. They still technically are that, but they got to be the only team to do it for a few hours before the Oklahoma City Thunder did the very same thing. So that's cool. Last couple of play-in tournaments, the 10 seed just lost immediately both times, but this time, with the way the league's talent has been, the 10 seed through 7 seed, in the case of both conferences outside of the Lakers being the 7th seed in the West, of course, all of those teams were relatively evenly matched. Also relatively similar in the record, which when people talk about their issues with the play-in tournament, they often refer to specifically like, we don't want a 10th seed beating a 9, or, you know, getting a spot over a team that technically made the playoffs or whatever. If it's a difference of 1 game or 2, then who really gives a damn? But anyways, let's talk about this game in specific outside of just Zach Lavine. As previously mentioned, the Toronto Raptors were really good out of the gate. This was particularly due to Pascal Siakam. I really don't understand what the Bulls' strategy defensively was in this one, because Siakam just absolutely had his way with Alex Caruso, who was his primary matchup. I understand that Alex is the best defender on the team, but I felt like the length of Patrick Williams would probably do more to bother Siakam than Caruso's tenacity. And, you know, ultimately they won the game, but that was a thing that was bothering me. Another thing worthy of mention is that Fred VanVleet, actually, I'm just realizing right now, he shot a lot worse than I thought he did. So he hit 7 3-pointers, so that's why I was like, oh yeah, he went off. And he did nearly get a triple-double, but he also shot 8 for 22. I'd say overall it was a fine performance, but I guess it felt worse for sure. He hit a really clutch 3 over Nikola Vucevic late in the game. But outside of that, for Toronto, not a lot of great performances. OG Anunoby was 4 for 13. Scotty Barnes was cool. He had 19 and 10. But Precious Achiuwa was not really doing all that much. Gary Trent was 1 for 7. Just not an outstanding performance, especially obviously in the second half. Defensively speaking, they were great, but also they were playing the 26th best offense in the entire league, so I don't know how much credit I could give them for that. Outside of Zach Lavine for the Chicago Bulls, DeMar DeRozan had his struggles early, but eventually started to get it going. And the other player of note to me here was Patrick Williams. I guess he did shoot 4 for 12, but he hit some timely shots, some big 3-pointers, and he was really key in a couple of moments. Had a really nice dunk in transition as well. But primarily for the Bulls, it was a defensive affair, and Zach Lavine kind of carrying the offense, finishing with 39 points. On 12 for 22 shooting, 2 for 7 from 3, and 13 from 15 from the free throw line. But that's pretty much that game. Really good performance from the Bulls after looking really bad out of the gate. I was kind of ready to hang my hat and be like, yeah, we're done. This is the end of the season. I wouldn't have cared that much, but it was nice to see them actually make the push and show some life as a basketball team. I do worry a little bit, though, that potentially making a playoff spot will give the front office credence to be like, okay, we can keep doing this. I don't want to keep doing this. Please rebuild this team in the offseason. But hey, nice to see my team win a basketball thing for once. But let's move on to what I think was the more interesting game between the two. At the very least, the more visually fun, because of course, in the case of this game, it was a lot of defense and sloppy offense. Finishing the game with a score of 109 to 105. Meanwhile, OKC got up to 123 points and New Orleans got to 118. Oh, I almost completely forgot to mention something about the Bulls game, so let's rewind that. DeMar DeRozan's daughter might have legitimately played a part in this game going the way that it did, because if you take a look at the free throw shooting for the Toronto Raptors, they ended up shooting 18 for 36 from the free throw line, which is, of course, 50%. And if you were listening to the broadcast, you probably noticed that every time the Raptors shot a free throw, some little girl in the crowd screamed. And as I'm watching the game, we had taken note of it and pointed it out a few times. And then in the fourth quarter, the camera shows DeMar DeRozan's daughter and she is screaming. And it was oh, it was her. It was DeMar DeRozan's daughter, who apparently won the Chicago Bulls a play-in game. I thought that was really funny. It was a nice little plot twist, because they're like, who the hell's doing that? There's your answer. Anyways, Pelicans versus OKC. This game, first thing that stood out, the Pelicans looked a lot better than OKC coming out of the gate, specifically because Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was having a very rough time adjusting to having Herb Jones defend him. When I talked about that series in my play-in preview over on the main channel, I did say that I would not be surprised if Herb Jones gave Shai Gilgeous-Alexander some fits. I think he is a particularly good type of defender to put against Shai with his length and speed, and obviously just being a good defender as is. And Josh Giddey had to step up as a result of that. I would say him, as well as Lou Dort, really kept the OKC Thunder afloat while waiting for Shai to come around. And then Shai eventually did come around. And when you had both Giddey and Dort having the good games that they were, and now Shai is also popping off, at that point became really hard for the Pelicans to overcome that, in spite of the fact that they still managed to nearly get there. Because the Pelicans also had an awesome performance. Trey Murphy with 21 points, Brandon Ingram with 30 points, Valanciunas with 16 and 18 on 78% shooting. Herb Jones had himself a 20-piece. CJ McCollum was not good. But otherwise, hey, really good performance from a lot of players. Even Josh Richardson in his limited time was really efficient and made some big plays. Trey Murphy in particular had some moments where I was really impressed by him. And I just can't help but, when I watch this team, be so sad that Zion isn't here, because I can't stress enough just how freaking well built this team really, really is. Just looking at the forwards here, there is no 4 forwards in the league on any team better than Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, Brandon Ingram, and Zion Williamson. That core deserves to play together, and I really think it can go very, very, very far if Zion Williamson can just be healthy. But for real, I gotta give a ton of credit to the OKC Thunder. As with that tangent aside, I have to give them their credit, because they were fantastic in this game, despite being the youngest team, or the second youngest team in the league. Here they are potentially making a playoff spot, which is huge, especially given that no one really had that kind of expectation for this team going into the season. If there was any bad side of this game, really, there were 2 players who had not great performances, in spite of actually being a big topic of discussion for Jeff Van Gundy, and that was both of the Jalen Williamses. Jalen Williams, J-Dub, the one in running for Rookie of the Year, he had 11 points, but shot 4 for 14 from the field. A rookie who is known particularly for his efficiency, not very efficient in this one. And Jalen Williams, the center, for some reason got up 7 3-pointers. Now, he's obviously shown some capability for shooting the ball, but you definitely got the sense that the defense was okay with him taking these shots, and he was a little too eager to take them. So, you know, for Jalen, the center, might want to dial that back a little bit. But otherwise, a very strong performance from the Thunder. You really can't be too sad about it. And even in the case of the Pelicans, same thing. There was some really great late game theatrics as well. The main thing that stands out is Brandon Ingram hitting a ridiculous 3-pointer. Shai Gilgeous hitting a very tough shot, fading away from the basket to give them the 1-point lead. And just a bunch of clutch free throw shooting, outside of Brandon Ingram missing one, of course. But there was times for the Thunder where, like, Giddey went to the line, Lou Dort went to the line, and we're like, those guys are okay from the free throw line, but are we sure they're going to clutch this out? They had ice in their veins, man. And I will say that going into this, if they are indeed the 8th seed, rather than be them or the Timberwolves, I do think those are teams that could potentially take a game or two off of the Denver Nuggets. Obviously, I'm not going to pick them to win the series by any stretch, but I could see Shai and this team making things interesting, because as I've actually not probably given OKC enough credit for how much depth they have. If anything, it's something that I've knocked a few times, but really, they got some guys who can play, and I'm definitely very impressed by them. And I'll probably do a video on the Thunder at some point, probably after wherever they get eliminated. I gotta talk about them, because even if they do end up missing the playoffs, I'm pretty happy with what they've been doing. I think I've said a couple of times, I think the OKC Thunder have the brightest future in the league, having Shai, having Chet, and having J-Dub, and the assets that they have. Things are looking very bright for the future of the OKC Thunder, and this is just a stepping stone to get there. But to bring it overall to the conclusion of what the original point of the video was, like, for real, like, I understand why there are some reasons to be not thrilled about the play-in tournament, but ultimately I'm having fun, and these games have been fun, and I think it's hard to argue with that. That's ultimately the most important thing, the fan experience, and for me, the fan experience has been awesome. So yeah, that's my post-game recap. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm going to talk about the Toronto Raptors and their future on this channel tomorrow. But yeah, that is it. Goodbye.